Hi, this is Hank Schultz, Senior Correspondent with NutraIngredients USA. I'm here at the Supply Side West Trade Show in Las Vegas. We're speaking today with Wasserman, a Washington-based attorney with the firm Manat, Phelps & Phillips. So Ivan, it seems like we've been seeing now with this second wave of GMP inspections, we're seeing more warning letters and warning letters that specifically mention ingredients that don't have an NDI notification and should have. Have you been seeing the same thing?
We're certainly seeing that more. First of all, Hank, thank you for speaking with me. We're seeing a lot of that more and more. It's going to keep growing. I mean, the NDI is still guidance, it's still a draft guidance, but from warning letters as well as from speeches that FDA officials have made, the NDI requirement is a law. The requirement to submit a new dietary ingredient notification if you have a new dietary ingredient in your product is the law. So FDA is not waiting for the finalization of the guidance document in order to start enforcing it. And why is FDA enforcing that in warning letters as opposed to just saying you've got an unsafe ingredient? Well, from a statutory perspective, if you haven't filed an NDI and an NDI is required, then your product is deemed to be adulterated, and FDA doesn't really need to get into the scientific basis of whether or not your product is safe or not.
So what can a firm do proactively to prevent these kind of problems?
You know, firms need to do their homework. We've entered a new area of FDA enforcement. FDA's gone through several years of GMP inspections, and they've made it very clear, both in enforcement language as well as in speeches that Dan Fabricant and others have given at this conference and elsewhere, that they're going to go deeper now. They're not just going to check if you have a procedure to identify your incoming raw ingredients. They're going to actually see if your procedure is valid. They're going to look at claim substantiation. They're going to look to make sure your claims are properly substantiated, that you've submitted your 30-day notifications, and that you have NDI notifications on file when you need them. So what can you do? I mean, I don't want to sound self-serving, but it's incredibly frustrating as a lawyer and someone who wants to help companies in these situations to get the call when the FDA is in the plant, when the warning letters arrived. Work with a qualified consultant, work with a qualified lawyer early. I know it's not necessarily an inexpensive proposition, but in the long term, it's a lot less expensive to do things right from the first place than to...
If you had to put a number on it, I mean, say if I'm going to spend $100 for a lawyer, I know that's low, say $1,000 for a lawyer to begin with, how much more expensive is it to fix the problems on the back end? 3-4 times as expensive?
Easily 3 or 4 times as expensive to go into FDA to negotiate a proper settlement. It's not only legal fees, obviously, but at that point you're potentially talking about product recalls.
Right.
The most recent warning letter resulted in destroying millions of dollars of inventory and doing a massive product recall, where had you done all your homework up front, that might have not happened.
And also, I mean, are there other resources that are available firms, not just necessarily contracting with a lawyer? Are there educational resources available?
There's lots of educational resources online. Obviously, I recommend following NutraIngredients.com for the latest news. Just had to plug you there, Hank.
Right.
FDA is a resource. FDA.gov has wonderful resources on it. And yesterday and elsewhere, FDA has made clear that they want NDI submissions to be a collaborative process. I think the folks that go in without talking to FDA first and just say, here's our data, here's our information, are the ones that are much more likely to not get their NDI through FDA than the ones that engage
Right.
FDA on their own or with counsel.
Well, and the other thing
basis.
I think that seems to have been lost in that discussion is the just looking at the number of first-time failures as opposed to follow those through to how many are ultimately successful.
Right.
So with the second or maybe even third go-around, I mean, obviously nobody wants to go to that level, but if they are successful in the end, that's what you want, right?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you want to get it through on the first time, and it's definitely a learning curve, and the NDI draft guidance, is still in draft, but it's still an excellent resource on what FDA is looking for. And I think over time we'll see the quality of new dietary ingredient notifications improve.
And so one could look at that amount of money, $50,000 maybe, as a guesstimate for an NDI notification as both insurance, cost of doing business, and a way to comply with the laws that exist.
It's the law.
Right.
Compliance with the law, it makes you a legal product, makes a quality product. And for better or worse, it's not always an inexpensive proposition, but if this is a business you want to be in, you have to comply with the law. Going through the right processes can really save you a lot of money on the back end. Again, from product recalls, we're seeing an explosion of class action lawsuits by plaintiffs' lawyers in California and elsewhere. And if you do your due diligence, if you do your homework on the front end, there's no guarantee of avoiding a class action these days, but it certainly is a good idea.
Ivan, thanks very much for speaking with us today. This is Hank Schultz reporting from the Supply Side West show in Las Vegas.